Welcome to Fish Stripes Unfiltered, episode number 16. My name is Azout, and we are recording this on April 6th, 2022, the day before the Major League Baseball season is slated to commence. Before I introduce our spectacular guest, I'll start off with my great co-host, Kevin Barral. Kevin, how are you doing today, man?
Doing great. I mean, when the people are watching this or listening to this, it's opening day. Marlins are in San Francisco, Sandy Alcantara against Logan Webb. We'll be doing our nice little live stream. People may have watched already, depending on the time, but we have a great special guest today, and I'll let you introduce him, man.
Yeah, he needs no introduction, but I'll do it for him anyway. He is the host of Miami Mic'd Up, the co-host and producer of one of our favorite podcasts, Swings and Mishes, the digital host and reporter for Bally Sports Florida, and probably most importantly, the Marlins Twitter Madness champion, UCF alum, Jeremy Taché. Jeremy, long time no see, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
It's so great to be here with you guys, and thank you for that very kind introduction. You know, when you say all those things out loud in such a kind way, it makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. So, yeah, thank you guys for having me. This is super cool, and happy opening day, everybody! As you're paying attention, I hope you're excited for our coverage over on Bally Sports. So, yeah, and I hope you're enjoying that game either, in a few minutes from now, or maybe you're watching this after the fact, which would be a really interesting but cool choice of you.
Yeah, you can't go wrong. Major League Baseball slated, like I said, to start tomorrow afternoon. I think some games were postponed already due to inclement weather. But Jeremy, the first thing I'm going to ask you is, a month and a half ago, I think there was almost no certainty that this season would start on time. We had no idea that we were going to get any sort of Major League Baseball. So how great is it that, hey, we're finally here. Tomorrow there's going to be Major League Baseball happening.
I have been in such a good mood all day because it finally does feel like that. Like today specifically, as we're talking here on Wednesday, like it's been so awesome to know, okay, hey, baseball's coming along. It's going to be a full season, and we're just going to experience what I think we all were a little worried wouldn't happen this year, which is just a full season of Major League Baseball. And from a Marlins perspective, with what the last few years have been with sort of like the up and downs, particularly the last 2 years and the way that they've kind of gone differently, and you had pandemic baseball in the middle of all of it, to sort of be like, all right, everything is sort of back to normal from that standpoint, from a league perspective. Even from the media side, we're getting to be around the guys in a more intimate way now. Just by being back in the clubhouse, like there's just so much more to look forward to in a real baseball season. And so when it was in jeopardy, it was awful. Nobody wanted this season to be cut short, and to know that we're now going to get the full slate after a shortened spring training, like it's kind of snuck up on us here, or at least for me, covering a couple of other sports as well. So it's been really exciting. And I just can't wait for baseball.
Yeah, man. I mean, let's get into baseball with the Marlins. I mean, they had an interesting offseason. Definitely the best one since Jeter and Sherman came in, but Jeter did leave. So let's talk about the moves in general. Let's grade this offseason in a way. Describe to us what your thoughts were on all the moves made, starting with Lewis Head and ending it off with the most recent new Marlin, Cole Sulser. So let's get right into that. And then I think Isaac will give his grade and I will as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Marlins made a number of moves, and obviously, as we've sort of gone through, I'm sure that I don't need to, matriculate through every single one of them. But I would say that in general, their ability here, and these last couple of moves in particular, solidified this as a solid offseason, right? Like this was a good offseason for the Miami Marlins. Like whether it was what everyone necessarily wanted it to be in a particular way. Some people wanted one star signed, right? As opposed to maybe a couple of, solid players, a couple of, plus players, guys who elevate your roster in Jorge Soler, in Avisail Garcia. But I mean, to me, when you look at just the difference right now from where the Marlins stood last year, and particularly at the end of last year, to where they are right now, there's no way to say it's anything worse than a B, right? Like it was I would probably say it's like a B to a B plus of an offseason, and depending on what certain players do in terms of the way that they perform. One guy who I really don't think should be should be underestimated in terms of what that move was for Joey Wendell. I think Joey Wendell is going to play a lot, and I think he's going to make a huge impact on this team. And the biggest thing that, and I was thinking about it earlier this morning, but the biggest thing that when I look at their offseason that I can sit here and think about, and now that Brian De La Cruz, at least, according to reports, is going to be on the opening day roster, we look at a team with real depth. We look at a team that can perform this season from positions of strength. They can play guys who are playing well. And if they're not playing well, they have other options. They can play guys based off matchups, and those splits aren't so drastic to where really, putting in the right-handed hitter to replace a left-handed hitter or vice versa in a platoon. Sometimes for the Marlins last year was really just about getting one guy a day off and playing someone who was significantly worse. Now, when those things happen, that's not going to be the drop-off, right? You're going to be playing guys who are actually in the lineup for their strengths 100% of the time. You have a Gold Glove catcher behind the plate, which is a giant upgrade from where you were last year defensively behind the plate. And so to look at what this team looks like now, it has me excited for the season. And do I think that they're going to win the division? No, I think projecting that right now would be, it would be too much. It would be an overstatement, and it wouldn't be accurate to analyze the team. But do I think that, like, if everything goes right, this could be a team that's, competing through September and at least, making a run at a playoff spot? Sure. Why not? Because there are enough pieces that are interchangeable that especially with what they've acquired this offseason, that make you believe in the potential of this team. And so, again, a lot would need to go right for that to happen, right? Or rather, an avoiding of so many things going wrong. I think when we look at the last 2 years, maybe you split the difference. In 2020, everything went right. Of course, that's after 60% of the team caught COVID in the middle of a very scary time. So to say everything went right maybe is revisionist history. But from there, it felt like every bounce, right? That Baltimore series, everything went right for the Marlins. And last year, everything went wrong. Nobody was healthy at the same time. Trades needed to happen. All of these things that ultimately went down for the Marlins, it felt like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And so now, if you split the difference even with the skill that's been acquired, you got to imagine this is a much better Marlins team this season.
Definitely, this is, and I was telling Isaac and some of the other guys off camera that this is probably the best team that we've seen in the past, 5 years with Jeter and Sherman taking over. So going into the next question, Jorge Soler signed with the team 3 years, $36 million, 2 opt-outs after the first season and the second season. This wasn't the perfect fit at the time for the team, as we have Avisael, Jesus, and then Brian De La Cruz, Noah's guy, who we were expected to see in center field, but Jorge Soler can't play center field. Avisael can't play it well, and now we know Jesus Sanchez, who's going to be the center fielder after spring. It wasn't the greatest one. He will be in center field. So what are your thoughts on the Soler signing, and how do you think, him being Cuban will help the community, possibly even fill up the stands in Lone Depot?
Yeah, I mean, look, anytime I'll start there first and then work my way back toward his impact in the lineup. That's always fun, right? And like the Marlins are really focusing on, and this is not from a roster state. Like, they didn't sign Jorge Soler because he's Cuban, right? Like, that's like, let's put that out there. Let's like make that abundantly clear to begin with, right? But having guys who can relate to people within the community is only a good thing. And the Marlins are trying to essentially, it feels like they're trying to be a team that is hyper local. And I think that's like just in the way that you look around, like you look at the stadium, you look at the food and the local options that exist within the stadium now that aren't your traditional ballpark food. There's all sorts of Hispanic twists on meals. There's a ton of different things that are making the Marlins want to feel hyper local. And so the idea that you're bringing in guys who can relate to the people within the community is just an added bonus to the player who you brought in. And so when you look at the player who you brought in Jorge Soler, the guy can mash, you know what I mean? And it's particularly cool news given the fact that Soler power, given the fact that I think he's going to be your leadoff hitter. Like, and I think that that's playing to a more modern lineup that the Marlins really haven't been able to put together over the last few years. When you look at the sort of traditional way in which they were laying out their order in the last few years, because you didn't necessarily have guys who could thrive at the top of the order who were also full of power like Jorge Soler. And so, like you guys said, at the moment, I think when Soler signed, everyone was still in that mode of, hey, trade for a center fielder, sign a center fielder. You know, there were specific names that people were growing attached to. There were also other power hitting options that people had been attached to who had signed in the previous couple of days before. And so it became, oh, whoa, what's going to happen? Right. Um, to me, Jorge Soler is a fit in that, obviously, given what the what the Marlins have shown us based off their spring training and what they're going into the season with, they view Jesus Sanchez's athleticism in center field as enough to get by in playing center field, that it's not going to cost them games given what he can give them at the plate. That's the decision they've made there, especially considering, and this is the part about having Brian De La Cruz that does actually like genuinely excite me about him being on a roster, is that when he's a late inning replacement, like I'm not afraid to have him go up to hit. Right. Like he's a legitimate hitter. He's a legitimate, in my view, he's a legitimate major league hitter. And coming out of the last season, I was like, hey, if they don't do anything in the outfield, I'm cool. He's playing center field every day. I'd love to see it for the first couple of months. Right. Like that was the mood I was in when last season ended. So to know that he's your true like fourth outfielder, and then Brian Anderson is going to be used sort of all over the place in this, Chris Bryant light type of way, if we're going to go based off Donnie's words, right? Based off at least the description of athleticism, right? Like, and that's fair. That's fair in terms of, if you want to go athleticism, but like if Brian De La Cruz is good like that, hey, hot take, Brian De La Cruz, good at baseball. And so having him as your fourth outfielder, where now if for some reason Jesus Sanchez is struggling, not significantly, but is just not a natural center fielder and you want a late inning replacement, there's the guy. And if for some reason Jesus Sanchez cannot play center field and it becomes abundantly clear, well, then the Marlins have to then figure out their platoons from there. And Brian De La Cruz becomes that guy on the everyday, at least I would imagine. And then they'll have to figure out what they do with that DH spot and the corner outfields between Garcia, Soler, Aguilar, and Cooper. But it's kind of a good problem to have, right? That you do have options after. And I'm not saying it's a good problem to have that you don't know for sure that your center fielder can man center field the way that you would like, but it at least is good that now, again, because of the guys they've brought in, and this goes back to the Soler signing, right? That's just a good baseball player. That's another good guy that's going to be in your lineup. So we'll figure out how to get him in there later. And I think it's almost like looking at some of these teams that have done it before. You look even at teams like the Rays, who they don't really decide anybody's playing any specific position. And their benefit has been they've had certain cornerstones that have been Gold Glovers, and that's made up for any other deficiencies. But they've just tried to bring the best out of the guys that they already have, and that's what the Marlins are trying to do here. So, I don't know. I think they're in a decent spot.
Yeah, that's what made it really peculiar that they had originally sent DLC down, because I think not only the defensive replacement thing, you mentioned it, offensively, let's say if Jesus Sanchez having a really tough day at the plate, over 3 or 3 Ks, and a top-notch left-handed reliever comes in, Josh Hader, you can also just plug in Brian De La Cruz, who is going to give up a good at-bat as well, and he can hold his own in center. So I think the way the roster ended up coming out and traveling to San Francisco as we speak, I think it's perfect. Obviously, it's not like the perfect fitting roster because you lack that center fielder, and you have a couple of corner outfield first baseman types, but the DH helps in a myriad of ways. Another reason why the team's going to be, I think, at least has a high floor for this season is the rotation. You obviously have the big three, and Luzardo seems primed for a big breakout season. Max Meyer, I think you were watching last night, shoved a bunch of Red Sox top prospects, including Jeter Downs, Tristan Casas, and he looked phenomenal. The 2 runs he gave up were sort of like, they're strange in a way. It was a hit batter and a wild pitch. Where would you like to see Max Meyer to begin? Obviously, he's going to be in AAA, but how soon would you like him in the major leagues?
Oh man,
And where?
that's such a tough question. I love that dude. I'm
Yeah.
obsessed with Max Meyer. I think that he's going to be a terrific major league pitcher. And it's a complicated question that you ask when you say when would I like to see Max Meyer, because I think it truly is dependent on the first month of the season's results for the Marlins, right? Because
Right.
if the Marlins get off to, a really slow start, then there's no reason to rush the kid. But at the same time, like, to me, my feeling almost always is if someone's ready, if it's abundantly clear that a person is ready to play at the major league level, we should just be playing them at the major league level. Like that's every team across Major League Baseball. But this is all that mindset also operates in a bubble, right? And when you do look at the Marlins, they have a specific rotation, and the 5 guys that are supposed to be there deserve to be there. They're major league pitchers. So there is a bit of a logjam, right? Like, so if all is going according to plan from a health perspective, but not from a record perspective, and you've got this healthy starting rotation, right, of all of these guys, but you've just sort of started slow, they're not going to rush Max Meyer up. But say the Marlins start kind of hot, and say there's 1 or 2 starters, who were just pitching okay.
Yeah.
Would I be shocked if we saw Max Meyer in May? No, I mean, I wouldn't. Like, because he's that good. And there's no reason why you don't just immediately, like, to me, if the way I view it, if you're the Marlins in particular, right, and you look at 162 game season and you look at your rotation, if you get off to one of those types of starts where it's like 20-10, right, something like that, where you just get off to a blistering hot start, and that, again, this is all hypothetical, right? That's probably not how this is going to go.
I wish it did.
Right? It might, but I would hope that they're playing at least 500 ball, right? But say they're even 5 or 6 games above 500 at the end of a month, and they're sitting right near the top of the division. Essentially, the game from there is, okay, play about 500 baseball the rest of the season, and you're in. You're gonna make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So why not now add something that's electric to your rotation and just start rolling out as much talent as you can? So that would go with the same deal if any hitters who were at that level, at the AAA level, were just blistering hot, bring them up, man, make them a part of it. Because I think now the Marlins have shown, like, all right, they have spent some money here. So they want to, no matter how much money that is, they've spent money, and that means they want to win more right now. So go ahead and start adding any talent. To me, why not start adding talent that can help you win? To me, the 5 guys that are there deserve to be there. And so there's no reason that Max Meyer should be in the opening day rotation, right? All 5 guys who are in that starting rotation deserve to be there. And I have no issue with starting Max Meyer in AAA. But if and when the time comes that it makes sense to bring him up and you think it can upgrade your team, you do it. Like, that's my view.
I think the way that this team could have been upgraded immensely was to have Max Meyer on that flight and in the opening day bullpen. I thought that was just a slam dunk of a thing that would make the team so much better. Like you said, those 5 guys in the rotation, all of them are more than deserving. A lot of them would be 3rd spot in the rotation or higher on many other teams.
Mm-hmm.
But I imagine having that right-handed Josh Hader come out of the bullpen in San Francisco when you need it. Let's say Eliezer, that fastball slider combination followed by Max Meyer's fastball slider combination.
And I agree with you. Like, you could call him up right now and he would be dominant. A legit great reliever, I think. Like, that's how I feel. It's all a question of how do you manage an arm like that? And, like, not to, like, but I don't believe Max Meyer has had Tommy John yet in his career at any point. And so, like, as messed up as this is to say, everybody's a ticking clock. Like, every single pitcher, it feels like, is going to have Tommy John at some point in their lives. And so, like, there's an argument to be made. Hey, just bring him up as a reliever, let him pitch until he blows out his arm, and then bring him back as a starter later on. Or you could say, hey, we need to be careful here, and we don't want to mess with this guy
Yeah.
too much, who we believe, and I think all three of us on this Zoom believe, and I believe the Marlins believe, is going to be an ace someday. And so maybe you see more of a David Price situation happen, right? Where again, if the Marlins are in it, that's when you bring him up to be a reliever. Even if the starters are doing well, you bring him up to be a part of that bullpen, even though he's a future starter, because, hey, we got to make a push down the stretch. And rather than trading a bat for a reliever, we're just going to call up one of our own and make our team better, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's something you could see. But again, it's with Max Meyer, it's all very dependent on what the team's record is at different stages of the season where you could or would see him.
And I think the best example of this was Shane Baz. Not just he didn't come in the bullpen, but if I'm correct, he was a starter. He started for the Rays, and he was a big part of that playoff team that, if I'm correct, got to the ALDS against the Red Sox and then lost. So that's a great example there. And then Kyle Seeloff mentioned this on the radio. You've probably heard it, Isaac. The Angels are doing this, the 6-man rotation. Is that something that you would like to see? And then you add either an Eddie Cabrera or a Max Meyer at some point, or Max Meyer in the bullpen. I think that's probably the best way right now. But if you're going to the trade deadline, Miami is 5 games over 500. Pablo's just lights out. Eliezer's having a great season. Do you think that's something that the Marlins should do? And let's add another dominant arm of Max Meyer, and let's just do this. Let's go for it.
Hey, first of all, I'm loving these hypotheticals because this is the best part about the day before the baseball season, right?
Yep.
Is that everybody can do this. Every single team can have their best case scenario conversations, and they're realistic because baseball is one of the weirdest sports in the world. And the Giants can win 100 games last year. You know what I mean? Like that's what's so wonderful about all of this. And so to me, I think that actually sounds like a great idea, right? Particularly when you do have Trevor Rogers in his second full season of a real workload, hopefully working a little bit more. You got Pablo Lopez, who, let's be realistic, has struggled to make it through a number of seasons healthy. You got Sandy, who's thrown a lot of innings and plans to throw a lot more. Eliezer's a guy who, I don't imagine that workload is really an issue for him because he's not throwing as often, but I don't think it's going to hurt you if he's throwing a little bit less. And then Jesus Luzardo, another young guy who's never pitched a full season. So adding a 6th starter simply to reduce the innings of everybody else would be something that would make sense for this team later in the season. And I feel that way if they're competing, right? Like, because that's the key part here, right? Where it's like if they're competing, and so it is, hey, all 5 of you, you're pitching through the full season, and we want you pitching, into the playoffs possibly. Then adding that 6th starter would make sense, even if it wasn't somebody as elite as Max Meyer. Like, it would make sense even if it was just, hey, we're going to throw Dan Castano in here as another guy.
Well, no Italian stallion slander.
I don't mean that. Hold on. I like Dan Castano. That was not meant as slander. That was not meant as slander. That was meant just specifically not to use the name Max Meyer.
Right,
the premise being, if it was him or Braxton Garrett or whoever, like if the Marlins were to decide in July, hey, looks like we're competing, let's trade for another arm and add him to the rotation, or let's bring up one of our own guys. Either way, it would make sense, right? To try to use that as a means to reduce innings for your starters rather than doing the spot start thing and having them skip starts. You just add an extra day of rest to the rotation, and automatically there's probably one less start for each guy, if not more, depending on how long you do it. So yeah, I think it would make a lot of sense. But it is simply dependent on how good the team is, because and this is even if they're hanging around, right? Because they don't have to be right in the thick of a race. They've just got to be within striking distance of getting back into a race. Because I think this season the Marlins will operate that way of all right, we're trying to get there, period. Yeah. Right. So if we're near it, we're not going to now use that as a means to break things down. We're going to use that as a means to build things up. And that's sort of the hope here. That's what they started with this offseason. You would think they're in position particularly with what that farm system is, to continue to upgrade if need be come the trade deadline. So I think that's a wonderful idea. I mean, now let me on principle say I hate the way that we baby arms, and I think it's all dumb, and everybody should be throwing 100 innings every month and just overthrowing, and every game starters coming out after 5 innings drives me completely insane. But God, when it's like 4 1/3 and we act like that's a good thing, oh my God. But that said, yes, in the way that we need to manage arms in the concept of Major League Baseball, the Marlins would be smart to do something like that.
Especially since a guy like Elias is a little bit injury prone. Pablo hasn't been able to pitch a full season. And then the last hypothetical I want to ask you here is, let's move Eliezer to the bullpen, a guy who doesn't pitch too many innings, injury prone. Add Max Meyer. You know, even if he's the 5th starter on the team, is that something that you would be for? Because Eliezer, that's something that we've been, I think, talking about even since before the lockout, since he had his 2nd injury with Pittsburgh, like saying, let's move him over to the bullpen so he doesn't risk injury. Although, to be honest, that injury in Pittsburgh was, he was running the bases.
I mean, things can be a little fluky, but I would say, I do think, and I do it myself because of all of the biases that I literally just told you like a minute and a half ago. I think sometimes we don't appreciate how good Eliezer actually is.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very good pitcher, and he's improved a lot every time he's either come back from injury or just like gone into the next season. He's good, and he continuously improves upon his game. And so until I see him struggle or, not prove that he can sort of play the role that the Marlins have him, penciled to play, I'm not so quick to move him. That said, of course he would be. I mean, it would make a lot of sense that he would be a good reliever. Like I know that I don't believe the numbers in his career so far as a reliever indicate that.
They're not good.
But I think if there was a legitimate move there, oh, hey, is there any chance that I could pause with you guys real quick and answer a phone call?
Yeah.
Is that okay? I'm sorry.
You're good.
Give me 1 sec. 1 sec.
I'm going to just sort of throw out one more hypothetical at you, and then we're going to get into some of the rule changes really quickly.
Do it.
That's all right.
Do it.
All right. I think we've all sort of maybe grown even fonder of Max Meyer. So Miami's in it. Is it like a slam dunk, hell yeah, do it? Or like you'd be a little reserved about trading Max Meyer for Brian Reynolds? He'd be the main part of the deal.
Let's see what type of year he has.
Who?
I don't know. Both of them. Like both of them.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, like, look,
Reynolds is doing his thing. Meyer's doing his thing.
Yeah,
Meyer's
I mean, look,
out.
Right. But so the question would be, right? Like, if the Marlins are in it, why? Who's performing well? Who's keeping them in it? Is center field still a detriment? Is the outfield because if they're performing well and they're winning a lot of games, then I would have to think that maybe that isn't looking like a big deal, right? And so why would you give up your young ace prospect to upgrade at something you don't necessarily need in the same way anymore? So now what starts happening is when you look at then other prospects and you start going, okay, who can we add to the bullpen? So is it calling up our prospects, or is it trading some of those prospects for, those guns in the bullpen that the good teams stack up on, right? Like that's what ends up happening every year. Is that the trade deadline, like 25 relievers get traded to 4 teams, and that those teams stack up, and that's the end of it. So I would say, look, I wouldn't be apprehensive to doing it if it was the thing that was going to put you over the top. Yeah, hell yeah, like 100%. If you're in the position where you're competing for a playoff spot and you believe that trading for Brian Reynolds or Cedric Mullins or whoever, right, a big upgrade, a big splashy move at the deadline to get yourself that star center fielder that's going to be the piece, right? Do it. Make the move, because you only get so many shots at it, especially when you're anchored by a young pitching staff. The argument, obviously, on the flip side would be there's so many of these dudes that it's like you could do one thing, right? You could trade them to get the piece to try to compete and do it right now, or you can go, there's so much of it that we're going to be anchored by this young staff like the Braves were for a decade, and it's all going to be fine, and Sandy, Pablo, and Trevor forever, and every supplementary piece from there. And like, sure, you could, like, 100%, you could think that and behave that way as well. So there's multiple schools of thought. I'm always of the belief that you chase it when you got a chance.
Yeah.
So if the Marlins are in it and that splashy move is the one to make it, pull the trigger. Why not? I guess that's operating from having grown up around, the one team that was winning very consistently in this market was the Miami Heat, and they were always the aggressive types when it came to landing players. Now, most of the time that was in free agency or other things, but even with some of those role players that they needed to acquire at deadlines, they would get aggressive about it. They didn't care about giving up picks. They didn't care about giving up the future. It was, hey, we can win right now, so why not try to win right now? No different than what they did this year and every other year otherwise. So I think the Marlins are now in that mode, right? And so if it comes down to the deadline and they think, hey, there's a move we can make that would put us over the top to make a run, I think they would do it.
No, I hope you're right, and I appreciate the great answer you gave, because it's not black or white anymore. I think Max Meyer really in his spring training performance, and obviously his opening day start last night is really, it's going to be tough when and if he ever does get dealt for that supplementary piece.
And operating in the gray is what allows all of us to do our jobs, right?
Exactly.
Like, that's what's fun, is that there's not necessarily right now like any move. Like, what's fun about this job is that if they made that move tomorrow, I could easily come on here and probably argue either side of it.
All right.
Like, because that's and that also shows you that it's probably like, that's why it had some real smoke, right? Because it is a pretty it's a good move for both teams theoretically. And so that's why those things happen. That's why they get to certain points on these conversations, because everybody involved knows it would be beneficial probably to both of us, but both teams get scared of the repercussions on both of their players. Like, it's easy to get concerned on either side too. So that's what's so fun about all this stuff.
And theoretically, if Meyer was on that rotation, if they made that move and Meyer goes to Pittsburgh, he'd be in the Pittsburgh's rotation right now, in my opinion, at least. They don't have
he would be
that many
their best pitcher.
He'd be their
whole organization.
I mean, I don't mean to. I mean, isn't like in one of my favorite pitchers last year, but I'm pretty sure Zach Thompson's like their one or two, right? He's their best pitcher. Max Meyer would instantly be essentially their ace, immediately. Which is why it's that's why sometimes I wanted everybody to kind of take a deep breath for a second, because I think we did all get a little caught up in move, trade. It's so easy, because it's also there was all this pent up emotion of essentially when Starling was traded, it felt like it was now oh, okay, so the season's over. Right? It went from a team that was playing okay and was out of it, and we all knew it, but it was now, oh, okay, so they're out of it. No more Duvall, no more Marte, that's it, they're gone. So season's over. And so there was so much anticipation for the offseason, and then the lockout happened in the middle of their offseason.
Yeah.
So we overanalyzed half of the moves and got so antsy and came up with all these different scenarios in our heads as to what they should do or could do or would do. And half the people went into the lockout thinking they should trade for one guy and came out of it totally sold they should trade for another, or that they shouldn't trade at all, right? Because we just spent 2 months talking. And so I am I'm not grateful. I'm not going to sit here and be oh, I'm grateful they didn't make the move because blank. But I am I think what it is it has allowed us now in the last couple of weeks to kind of remind ourselves, oh yeah, there's a reason why Max Meyer was such a big deal. He's no longer just a thing to get me the fun shiny object of Brian Reynolds. Oh yeah, that's what Max Meyer actually is. And so I think and that's what Khalil Watson actually is, and that's what Edward Cabrera actually is. All these guys that had been floated within it. It's real easy when there's no baseball going on to kind of forget what their ceilings are. And so it makes it more fun now too, because there's this tease all year long of the will they, won't they of Brian Reynolds somewhere along the way.
Get ready for the deadline.
It's kind of fun. I like it.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. And obviously one of the reasons that we were in the lockout, a bunch of the CBA, and so we come out of it. And there are three main rule changes I sort of want to get your opinion on. We'll go over each of them quite briefly. The first one's the universal DH. We no longer have to see Sandy Alcantara swing a bat, thankfully, and we don't longer have to see Tyler Glass now just take pitches. I personally, I think I'm a traditionalist in the most sense,
too.
but I think this one, it needed to happen. I don't need to see Eliezer break his, tear a hamstring going to first base. I think this was, the right time for it.
R.I.P. the pitchers hitting.
It sucks.
One of my favorite conversation. I was only there a couple times this spring. I wish I could have been there more, but Heat, Panthers, such. Making excuses. It's ridiculous. Stop making excuses. But anywho, it was me and Daniel Alvarez with, I think it was Daniel Alvarez who was there with Trevor Rogers. And he was like, yeah, man, at least I got my 2 hits, And I was like, yeah, you could have been Moonlight Graham. You could have come up, not gotten a hit. And then imagine, this is what I was thinking about. Imagine being a National League pitcher who pitched like 1 or 2 seasons in the last couple of years and didn't get a hit. And so you had a couple of years of opportunities to get a hit, never thinking in any of those at-bats, oh, this might be the last time I have a chance to get my first big league hit. And then they implement the universal DH and you play another 10 years and forever. You have to be in the major leagues. You could have a great major league career, but you never got the hit and you had a chance. You're not one of the dudes who came up after the DH. You had your chance before, and forever you're just going to have to sit there and go, I'm never going to get a chance to step back into that batter's box. I've been thinking about those guys, but other than that, it's definitely the right move. I love the National League style of play. To me, the benefit of the extra level of strategy was something that, to me, like I miss. Now we've gotten to this stage of baseball where pitchers are just so good and so dominant, and their stuff is so nasty that like there's no like it can hurt the pitchers who are hitting. Like it's beyond now just like a conversation about the aesthetic of the game. This was more a decision that I think they made because they were like, we just can't afford to have these commodities who are worth hundreds of millions of dollars sometimes going out there and risking injury over something that the benefit is not enough, right? Like they're not good enough. I don't like it from a style of play perspective because to me, baseball is a game of chess. And like the idea that you have to both offensively and defensively work around certain spots of the order is fun for me. And I also I think it's selfish as a pitcher. I think I think of it, everything I think of is from a pitcher perspective. But I'm like, man, the fact that they don't get that break of just one hitter that they can kind of just throw a few curveballs to and know it's going to be an out. Like there's something about that's kind of what baseball is. But at the same time, from an entertainment perspective and from like wanting to grow the game and make things more entertaining and also more competitive and save your pit, like all of those reasons give you the reason to implement the DH. And so ultimately I am glad they did it, but I am going to miss the 7th inning double switch. Like I'm just going to miss it. And it's a part of now a baseball lexicon that like we're all going to remember it, but we're like the last group of people who are going to have like grown up with it. And now the next generation of kids is going to have no idea. Like pitchers used to hit. Pitchers hit. That's crazy. Why would pitchers hit? That's nuts. They're going to think of it as like a completely insane concept. So to me, I don't know. I'm glad it happened, but I'm going to miss it.
I've been such a fan of the National League style of play. It's such a different game. It's such a different, strategy for a manager. And like my dad likes to tell me, Shaquille O'Neal can have someone else shoot his free throws. So why shouldn't Pablo Lopez go up and have to hit, even though he's ironically probably the best?
He's probably a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, probably not the best example there. Kevin, are you on the same boat as Jeremy and I?
Yeah, we're gonna miss trying to see Pablo getting that first homer. Sandy probably, making that happen. If we all remember, Adam Simber with almost his RBI winner, he would have had a walk-off against the Mets. But I think the happiest person right now should be Garrett Cooper, who's going to be able to finally play DH and not have to go at first and risk an injury. Not even that, he's going to be able to go back to his 2020 self, hopefully, and have a dominant season like he did. So I'm all for the DH. Having Eliezer get injured was one of the worst things that happened because he had such a
Yeah.
good start in Pittsburgh, and seeing
Yeah.
him get injured because of base running is just it sucks. I'll miss pitchers hitting. We got to see Jose Fernandez hit 2 bombs.
Yep.
Dontrell Willis was one of the good batting pitchers.
We got a couple of the great
bat.
ones in the last, like in the last decade. We did get a couple of the great.
In the Marlins itself
Yeah.
too. If you remember, Jose came in as a designated hitter, if I'm correct, or a pinch hitter at some point in
Definitely.
Atlanta, and he got the if it was a double. I don't know if it was an RBI, but he made it happen. So I'll miss it, but I think we should be pretty happy with it now, having different options.
And that was a good point about from a Marlins perspective. Like, this is great for the Marlins. Like, God, they more than I don't want to say more than other teams, right? Because everybody gets the Phillies only have DHs, so it's good for them that there's at least one spot for those guys to go, right? But I mean, seriously, like, there's not a lot of teams based off of where their roster was going into the offseason that could have benefited more from just adding the DH to give them that spot, so there wasn't the redundancy of Jesus Aguilar and Garrett Cooper. Like, being able to put both of those guys in the lineup every single day almost is something that, like, is great for the Marlins, and being a DH hopefully should help Coop's durability. I mean, it's so funny, the whole Cooper durability thing, because most of his injuries are like really freak injuries. One of them, he was hit on the hand and it broke his hand, and it was like, there's so many of these that have been kind of like weird injuries, but when they happen consistently enough, then you just have to start to kind of like view it that way. And so hopefully he can just stay healthy and have a really great year from that DH spot. And obviously that would be hugely beneficial for the Marlins to be able to add a guy like Garrett Cooper for the full 162.
Right. And I say good many options, because let's say you put BA in left field for a day and one of the outfielders goes, and you could put Soler in there at DH, and that would be a great option. He was the DH for the Braves for a good amount of time as the first hitter, so that's another one there. You could even put Aguilar in there, who's done well. So you have a lot of options, especially in such such an upgraded bench from last season to this season. Wendell could fit in that spot if you ever want to play him there at some point and not in the infield. So you have a lot of options to go there, not just Cooper.
I mean, think about what because you've mentioned it here. The depth of this team now and the positional flexibility is great. Better. It's a lot better. Like the fact that Joey Wendell can play all 3 infield positions, second, short, third. You got Miguel Rojas, who can play all 3 of those positions. You got Jazz Chisholm, who, right? Yeah, really all 4. You got Brian Anderson, who I believe could play first base if needed. I don't think that they would do it, but I believe that he could. Right?
They put him in center field.
Right. I mean, if they put do you see what I'm saying? Like, and again, if we're doing the Chris Bryant thing, like, I believe he could play. Like, he's athletic enough to do it, but that wasn't really the point. He's playing third, and he's playing all 3 outfield positions. De La Cruz is playing all 3 outfield positions. With the DH, you've now got a first baseman and a DH who are now interchangeable there, but you've got both corner outfielders who can DH. They can also, more so, Avisail can play both corners, more so than Soler can play both corners. But still, you've got that versatility. And Jesus Sanchez is playing all 3 outfield positions, or at least is capable of it. We know he can play right and left, and he's going to play center. So you've got all of these guys who can be maneuvered in all of these different ways throughout your order. And it can allow you to do a lot more matchup-based stuff. And it allows you to then come off the bench with these other players earlier in the game as well, just to be beneficial to your team, not as subs because you now need a sub because somebody got hurt or because, there's some bad, whatever. In the 5th inning, you can make the decision to bring in Brian Anderson as a pinch hitter for just about anybody, because someone on the field is going to be able to shift around. Everybody's going to be able to shift around and play other positions, sort of like what we initially saw years ago with Joe Madden and the Cubs, or obviously the Rays. So just the idea that now the Marlins are in a position where when they bring guys off the bench, on opening day, there's a righty on the mound, right? So if Joey Wendell starts at third base, the Marlins can come off the bench with Brian Anderson, John Birdie, and Brian De La Cruz.
Payne Henry is in there as well.
That's so much better than it was. Those 3 guys all started a lot of games, and should have, but those are 3 good baseball players who were just all on the bench and options for you. And one of them can play, both of them theoretically, multiple can play center field theoretically. If anything, actually, kind of all 3 weirdly somehow are capable of playing center field. And then you've got a couple that are playing corner outfield positions, a couple that can play in the infield. That's great, man. That's really wonderful to have, and to have that flexibility is important. And I just think that, no, the Marlins didn't go get any specific splashy bat, but now like there are 11, right? If you go with all 8 starters and then those 3 guys, 11 solid Major League Baseball players in the Marlins lineup. Like that's great.
And that's not even counting Peyton Henry, who I chose as a breakout.
Hey, shout out Peyton Henry, huh?
He had a good spring.
Yeah,
he did have a good spring. He's good. I don't know. He might be good. Who knows?
Yeah,
might be a solid backup catcher, right? That's all you need out of him. He just needs to be a solid backup catcher for your Gold Glove catcher.
Exactly. And I should have known that the DH conversation maybe would have, gone onto a longer conversation, especially with this team, like Kevin mentioned. The last one I want to mention.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. No, it's a great one. And the last one I do want to bring up is the extra inning rule. It wasn't originally going to be there implemented for this year, but last second changes. It is starting the 10th inning. There will be a runner on second base. Personally, I hate it. I really don't like it. I loathe it. I don't. It's just so weird to me. I would have been really okay with it if it had started maybe in the 12th inning. I think that would have made a little more sense. But right away, 9 innings are over. You will have a ghost runner on second base. Like I said, I don't like it. Jeremy?
The 12th inning would be cool with me, right?
Yeah.
Like play the 10th and the 11th as extra innings, and then if you need to kind of speed it up from there, that's fine. Throw a guy on second base, but play baseball. And don't get me wrong, like I'm all for coming up with ways to make the game more entertaining.
Exactly.
And I actually think that weirdly, what would be almost more fun, would be if you put a guy on first base, because then. Because then it's
sacrifice flies. That's it.
Well, right. Because
if you put him on second,
if you put him on second, it's a couple of sacrifice flies. If you put him on first, then there's is somebody bunting to get him over to get the one out, and then there's also, or are you just is this going to make extra innings a game of athleticism, which is all right? We got to extras. Who's the fastest guy on the bench? Go try to steal second. Like. How fun is that? That's the best. Yeah. I would argue that there is nothing better in all of baseball entertainment than when everybody in the stadium knows a dude's going to try to steal second. And everybody's waiting to see that pitcher lift his front leg and watch the 5 seconds that's about to happen. That's to me, one of the most electric times in baseball is when in a big moment that dude is going to try to steal a base. Remember when was it Gerard Dyson who was on Kansas City?
Yeah.
And they would bring him in every game in the 8th inning, in the 9th inning. Anytime somebody got on first base, he would steal second, he would steal third, right? How fun would it be if that's what extra innings were? And it ultimately then kind of influenced your roster as a result. You might keep a guy who had some speed. Yeah, gosh, like Monte.
The Angels.
Yeah, man. Shout out Monte. But I just think that if you're doing it for entertainment's sake, that would be the more entertaining thing to do. Yeah. If you're doing it for we just got to get out of here sake, then fine, throw a guy on second base. But yeah, I would prefer if you did it in the 12th.
Yeah, it would be like the intentional Dave Roberts thing, That'd be like the intentional steal off Mariano and get driven home.
This is what I'm saying. We're talking about Gerard Dyson and Dave Roberts as baseball players. They were not good baseball. I mean, Dave Roberts was a fine baseball player. Yeah, but those dudes were dominant baseball players, and our memories of those guys are seared in our heads forever.
Yeah.
Because those are the most exciting plays in baseball. So to me, if you were trying to make it more entertaining in extra innings as a means to stick around, right? Yeah. As a means to continue to watch it. Because it's not about, hey, let's get out of here. Because that's not the point. The point should be that the best team wins.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you want to make it more entertaining to give people a reason to stick around, that's what it is. Make it this yin and yang. It's always great when you don't know what's going to happen. So a team could choose to lay down a bunt, then pinch run. A team could pinch run and try to steal. There's so many different options. Or a team could just ground into a double play. And now the next team has their advantage to go into the next inning. So anyway, that's my rant.
So if a team decides not to pinch run and the guy just hits a home run, okay, you see.
Yeah, it's over, right? It doesn't matter, right?
Wow, anyway. I'm definitely going to quote this podcast, the tweet for it, and say, Jeremy Taché, best rule invention of all time. I think that's definitely the way to go.
Awesome. I love it. I'm glad we're in on it.
And based on your facial expressions, Kevin, I assume you concur.
I hate the rule right now. 12th inning sounds perfect to me, and I love Jeremy's rule. Rob Manfred needs to call you like right now to make this happen.
I don't understand how nobody went, hey, wait.
Yeah.
We saw what it is on second, but what if we put him on first?
Yeah.
Like nobody
Monte would have a job. Monte would have
Right.
a job.
Somebody
And
if
when
you
you
want
look at
fireworks, man, if you want fireworks, that's the way to do it.
And when you look at the rule right now, I look at Miami versus Blue Jays 2020. That game where Cervelli hit the homer right after the inning. That was it. Marlins lost. That perfect extra innings rule. Miami's really bad in extra innings too. When the man was on second base, especially
which was so bizarre.
It's like an advantage. The home team has the advantage in extra innings because you get the second chance. For the away team to have a possible chance, you need to at least score 2 to 3 runs to have a good chance.
They have to go for 2.
That wasn't going to happen for the Marlins. They didn't have a good offensive team.
Which is why putting a guy on first is more fun for everybody.
Yeah. There we go.
I totally agree. The heartbreaking one that sticks out to me was that I think Washington game that Miami did. They go for the bunt. That's the road team.
I remember that.
And just first batter, Schwarber walks it off. It's like that's not the way you lose a game. Like
it was so
going for 1 run when you're the road team when you know Schwarber's leading off the next freaking inning.
Guys, I can't wait for baseball.
Yeah,
this is so great.
Wow,
and this is great.
The Red Sox
awesome.
I'm giddy.
We'll have it soon. I guess the last question, about baseball anyway, that I'm going to ask you is just any surprise major league teams that you see making the biggest jump, for any the first teams besides Miami, of course.
Yeah, other than Miami.
Teams that you have your eye on.
Man, it's a good question. If I'm being perfectly honest, I'm proud of myself for even knowing what's going on with the Marlins right now. So I am doing a little catch up on everybody else. I'm not gonna pretend like I'm as informed as I will be in probably 48 hours from now. Legit, I'm about to do a crash course. But I would say what's most interesting to me, to be honest, and you actually just mentioned them, the team that I'm most interested to watch this year is the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to see the encore to the sort of breakout seasons of a number of guys over there. And Vlad Jr. is as fun of a hitter. I mean, to me, he's as must watch of a right-handed hitter as we've had since Miggy was in his prime. And I know Mike Trout is obviously a must-watch hitter, but he's a robot who doesn't exist from this planet. So when I'm talking about someone who I have to watch Mike Trout every time because he's just going to do the perfect thing every time. But when I'm talking about watching, this entertainment, I'm so into Vlad and what he's going to do this year. And I just think the fact that they clearly it's always cool when there's a team in that division that decides, no, we're not going to back down to what it is that the Yankees and the Red Sox do. And the Rays do that, but in a different way, right? The Rays do it. They're never going to spend, and they're just going to do it in their weird way where they're now trading Austin Meadows as a salary dump. They're going to figure out their thing, and it's going to be its own dynamic, right? But when a team says, all right, we've got our core. We're going to make trades. We're going to spend. They got George Springer last year. They're bringing in guys this, Matt Chapman this year. They're doing a lot to try to improve their team, and that's always fun for me when someone kind of tries to chat when either essentially the Orioles or the Blue Jays try to make a run at it. That's fun for me, and I know maybe that's a little East Coast bias here, but I'm excited to see what happens over there in that division.
Kevin, what's your team?
Toronto was a good one.
Yeah,
I was thinking Chicago at first. If they'd gone Carlos Correa, that would have been a very scary team. But man, I like the Minnesota Twins. They were one of the worst teams last season. You got Correa, you got Sonny Gray, you got some pitching, you got Chris Archer. That's nothing crazy, but and you re-signed Byron Buxton to what was it, a 5 or 6 year deal? If he stays healthy, Minnesota is going to be a scary team.
I agree completely that they have the opportunity to be. And I also am sitting here and I'm like, man, the way that all that was structured with Correa sure puts them in a good position to be the 2012 Marlins.
Oh.
So if they don't get off to a good start,
trade him.
Hey, Miami, you interested in Byron Buxton? Hey,
Oh.
everybody else, are you interested in 1 year of Carlos Correa because he'll opt out after this year and go back on the market and rebuild from there? It's like what, and I guess that's actually the thing about Minnesota that is so intriguing to me is that they have an opportunity to be really, really, really good and
Yeah.
also have the easy outs. That contract that they signed with Correa is like the most movable thing in the world.
Yeah.
And Byron Buxton, it wasn't like earth-shattering money.
No.
So again, a sort of movable contract of a guy like that, at least at this point, if they wanted to move on, like they made their commitment so that they could keep him. But remember, I mean, before that, everybody was just assuming that they were going to try to move on. He was one of the guys that had sort of been floated as a center field option possibly here.
Yeah.
So like, I'm just like, I'm fascinated by that team. I know we're just rambling now off the cuff, but it's just an interesting thing to keep an eye on.
It is.
Yeah,
It's
with
a fair point
Minnesota,
because,
Buxton, if he wasn't going to get a lot of money, he was injured throughout most of his seasons in the MLB, and his one productive season where he played like 120 something games,
He was amazing.
He was okay. And that's the thing with Buxton. It's uncertain, but you made that trade with the Yankees. It was a pretty okay trade. I mean, you got Gary Sanchez, a catcher. I like Mitch Garver a little more.
Forgot about that.
I think, yeah, man, that was a great trade too.
Gio Urshela.
No,
I
it's
did
good,
not
good
think
trade.
the
They're
Yankees
good.
Yeah, they're good.
They're good.
And the one other team I'm gonna give a shout out to are the Los Angeles Angels. That team got really pretty. That team got pretty good. You added Syndergaard. You added some good pitching depth in there. You re-signed Raisel Iglesias. That team looks pretty good.
Yeah.
And I'll say they addressed what they needed to.
Major League Baseball needs that team to do well. And just so so we're clear, Byron Buxton got 7 years, $100 million. And what does
That's it. That's nothing, bro.
Yeah,
that's nothing.
Chump change.
Hey, I mean, the AAV is not bad. Like,
really
that's all I'm saying is like, if there's like the type of franchise that existed that would be interested in having a player like that for that type of length,
would be Miami.
It's not an unbelievable contract that puts anybody out of it, is the point.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that the AL Central could be like a potentially good division, and which would make Minnesota make a call like that to other teams that are.
That's all I'm saying, man. If that's all, I'm just saying things, man. I have no. We're over an hour into this. I have no sources telling me anything about anything. I'm just having fun. We're just having a good time.
And just really, my team would definitely be the Detroit Tigers. I think they're going to take that big step that Miami has lacked, that hasn't taken yet. So I definitely think the Detroit Tigers. Riley Green, when he's healthy, he's going to be a stud. Spencer Torkelson will be the starting first baseman. He's going to hit 50.
I love that guy.
He's the best offensive prospect I've seen since I've been following baseball, besides Vlad Jr., of course. So that's definitely
Seattle. Seattle's another one. They made some big moves. The Mariners
be good as well. Switching gears really quick before we end things. 2 games left in the regular season, Jeremy.
Hey.
Clinching the #1 spot, apparently. I know Kevin's very happy that we're speaking about the Miami Heat. I attend some games.
I never thought this would happen in a million years.
But we're going to do it anyway. What Kevin was telling me was that there's no way that Miami faces Brooklyn in the first round. I wasn't too aware of these play-in rules.
Right. So ridiculous, it's possible that it's possible.
It's possible.
What the reality is right now is that currently Brooklyn is the 8 and Cleveland is the 7, with Atlanta and Charlotte as the 9 and 10. Mm-hmm. If things stay as such, right? If that was the way things worked out and Brooklyn was the 8, the way that the play-in tournament works is that the 7 and the 8 play against each other and the 9 and the 10 play against each other. The winner of the 7 and 8 game is the 7 seed for the playoffs. So if Brooklyn goes to Cleveland and beats them, which we all would expect they would, they would face the 2 seed. The Heat would then face the winner of a game between Cleveland, the loser of that first game, and the winner of Atlanta and Charlotte. So the winner of the 9-10 game plays the loser of the 7 and 8 game to be the 8 seed.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a little complicated. It's easier when you're looking at the standings in the bracket than what I'm doing here. I'm trying to lay it out for everyone.
No, you laid it out perfectly.
Yeah,
but essentially, that's where the Heat are at. So I think we're all rooting for Brooklyn to win that playing game. I don't think I think it's not for the faint of heart to go up against the Brooklyn Nets in the first round. Do I think that the Heat would beat them? Yes, I do. Do I want to have anxiety every day of that
No.
entire series? No, I don't.
Ooh. I mean, as
I'd
fun as it
rather
would be to
not.
attend that, it'd be. I would love to
No,
watch.
look, it'd be fun, right? Like that's the part of it where it's like if I know at the end of it they're gonna win,
fine.
then I'm like stoked to have the tension of the rest of it. But if I don't know that they're gonna win, and you know, and I believe that they would. Like the reality is I believe that the Miami Heat, and I'm not just saying that. Like I really do believe that the Miami Heat would beat Brooklyn in a 7-game series. I just don't think Brooklyn plays enough defense. Like I just don't think that they do, and Miami could do enough to slow down. At least I can't say slow down Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving really mostly.
We lost by like 40 last time we played.
Yeah, but you know,
they were losing those games on purpose.
I don't think that was the case, but I do think that like they obviously had to make some changes. They've made those changes.
Yeah.
And it's made. I mean, I'll tell you, there's a possibility here that if the Heat win their last 2 games, they are riding their longest winning streak of the season into the playoffs, which is crazy to think about for a team that's been in first place for most of the year.
Right, and they're pretty much winnable ball games that they have these.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Definitely,
and they just have to win one to clinch the 1 seed.
Oh,
so if they so if they win, that's just where it's at after last night. So after tonight, I believe actually, I forget what the scenarios are, but there's a scenario where the Heat, I believe their magic number is 1. Like so, there's a possibility that they go into Friday and they've already clinched, which would obviously be great. But like, it'd be cool if Friday night, even if Friday matters, they play against the Hawks, they win at home, that clinches them the 1 seed, and then they can rest everybody in Orlando on Sunday.
Magic numbers just mean so much more to me in baseball settings.
Yeah, for sure. Like, because it's every day, right? It's every day. So when I say magic number is 1, it's like, all right, tonight. Where with I'm saying the magic number is 1 for Miami. They don't play for 2 days.
Right.
I remember that one in 2020.
Oh, it was incredible.
Incredible. That was fun. And one thing that I'm obviously not an avid basketball guy.
No,
it's just like obviously it's money incentivized. Just why?
There we go.
Isn't it? How many is too many playoff teams? I thought that 16 out of 30 was already too much. Obviously it's money, but still, now that to play in, I thought that was just annoying.
So a combination of things. So there's 2 sides of the argument. One side is obviously like money, and they make money off playoff games, and those games are going to be very highly viewed. On the flip side, I could also say that there's a lot more teams that have to play with integrity through the rest of the season, past the trade deadline. Because, for example, right, Washington, who you see there is the 11, only in the last couple of weeks did they really drop off from having a chance to be in the tournament. And so once that happened, all right, Bradley Beal, you're out for the year, right? But they didn't trade Bradley Beal at the trade deadline, in part because I believe at the time they were the 9 or the 10. So it would have been authentically trading your superstar out of a playoff spot, right? Which is non-competitive.
Yeah.
In the Western Conference, you have teams like the Spurs. Spurs are like 8 games under 500. They're not a playoff team. Like they're not worthy of being a playoff team. But hey, they've had to play their hardest for the entire season. And so there's an argument to be made that it keeps the integrity of the league intact more with less teams tanking the rest of the way through the season. And with more spots, there might be more teams that go into a season and say, hey, you know what? We could be a playoff team. Yeah. And so look, you look at what the expanded playoffs have been like in Major League Baseball. I love it. Like, I think it's great because the more teams that can get in, the better. And the reality is here, 7, 8, 9, 10, there's also an argument to be made in some ways. You're by adding a 10, like it's bad, right? Like some of these 10 seeds are horrible and they don't really deserve a chance. But at the same time, 7 and 8 were already like 99% of the time the 1 and the 2 seeds are winning. So the idea that there's a chance that they're knocked out immediately, like you're not rewarding being the 8th best team in the conference. You're just creating something that's really entertaining for the fans and skimming a little bit off the top and bringing something up from the bottom. I don't mind it. So yeah, I mean, it's made the season more entertaining for all those teams right there in the middle. That's for sure, right? And even for example, the Heat were playing like this week. The Heat were playing for the 1 seed. They played against Charlotte. In other scenarios, Charlotte might not be in. I mean, I guess it's pretty close in this play-in scenario, but you're getting an authentic performance from these teams.
Yeah, that's true. And the play-in is what, a one game?
Just one game. Yeah,
One game.
it's so like you're looking at it now. 7 and 8 will play each other. 9 and 10 will play each other. Right.
Okay.
Winner of and then one more game.
Right.
Because the loser and the winner of those, and that's it. So it's 3 total games.
All right.
I'm
glad it's not another 7-game series.
No, that'd be crazy. Yeah,
it wouldn't make sense.
These aren't authentic playoff teams. Like if you don't get, it's just like I guess it's a little different, but like to me, if you don't get to the 64 in March Madness, I don't care that you were in that play-in game. Right. You're not a tournament team. This is kind of the same way. If you're the it's hard, I guess, if you're the 7 seed, but like if you're the 7 or the 8 seed and you lose that first game to these teams, like you weren't a playoff team. I wouldn't view that as a playoff season. It was one game. So that's at least how I look at it at this point.
And I think the best example is the Western Conference. All those playing teams at the moment, they're a good amount of games under 500.
Oh, they're bad. Yeah, they're bad.
The Spurs are 11 games under.
Yeah, they're bad. Like those teams are bad. At least
just
the East.
Yesterday,
yeah,
just
at least
yesterday,
the East
the Lakers were in it. Just yesterday, the Lakers were in it, and they were like 12 games under 5. Yeah, there you have it.
Horrific.
It's bad.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really not good. Like out there, it's rough. But at the same time, right? Like, man,
you never know.
But also like think about like LeBron James probably ended up playing maybe 20 more games this season than he might have otherwise. He might have been hurt might have had a bad ankle or something. And so all these fans all across the country got to see LeBron James play in person now. Got to see him play against their team. Like I know but like that's part of this, right? Is making sure that the stars are actually playing through the whole season. And because it's become so incentivized to tank, it's a way to keep teams playing sort of authentically.
Yep, that makes total sense. And here we are, a day before the Major League Baseball season. We're talking about some
tanking.
NBA,
talking about tanking.
9th and 10th seeds in the NBA.
I love it.
That on Fish Stripes Unfiltered, we'd be discussing LeBron's, trip around America again in what?
Yeah.
What is this year? 20? You're 18 for LeBron?
You're 500. Feels like he's been here.
I
mean, he has been there my whole life. 2003 was his first year. 19, you're 19.
19 years. Holy crap! And he's still like good.
He's amazing. He's gonna win. He could win the scoring title.
He could win him. Yeah.
Can he?
Oh, this is a fun. Wait, last thing I promise, and this is I know, but and then I really also really want to whatever. But the way that it's set up, I was listening to a podcast, Basketball Illuminati, and they basically throw out all these like fun little conspiracy theories about things with basketball, and what they talked about is that the way that the schedule works out for Sunday night is there are 3 guys in competition for the scoring title. Giannis, Joel Embiid, and LeBron. Joel Embiid is 30.3 points per game. LeBron is 30.2. So it's like that close, right? Joel Embiid plays at 7:00 Eastern time. LeBron doesn't play until 9:30 Eastern time. And so if he plays one of the next 2 games in the next couple of days, he can go into that night, or if he plays both games in the next 2 days, he needs 2 of the next 3 games to be able to qualify for the scoring title. He needs to play 2 more games, and there's 3 to play for him. So if he plays in the next 2 games, goes into Sunday night, Joel Embiid has a bad game and goes below him in points per game, he'll just sit out Sunday night's game and win the scoring title, sort of like the Jose Reyes bunt to win the National League batting title.
This reminds me of the D. Gordon one where he had.
Or was it D?
It was D. Gordon. He homered in the freaking game. Right?
Yeah.
He went 3 for 4 and he ended up winning. I think he beat Bryce Harper in the Bryce Harper's MVP.
Yeah, see, his was the opposite of the Jose Reyes thing. The Jose Reyes thing was that he laid down a bunt for a base hit to take the lead, and then they took him out of the game. And I was like, come on. He can't play I got it, but that's what the LeBron thing would be. Is he would decide, nah, I'm good. Or he would at least know, all right, if I'm going to go out there, I got to score this many points to be able to win the scoring title, which would be really cool entertainment on TV. Imagine it's like the 4th quarter and there's 5 minutes left and doesn't matter the score of the game. LeBron James needs 10 more points to be the scoring champion of the league for the year. Would be really cool.
All right, good.
But anywho.
Quick question, Jeremy.
Yes.
Who is your Miami Heat MVP this season? And there's a lot of options.
Oh man. So it has to be. This is tough. I would say, actually, I'll give you a fun answer. PJ Tucker. And the reason
Oh,
I say it is
I was gonna give you an even
while
better one.
he's just played a ton of games and he's been there and played his role, and I'm assessing value as contributing consistently on every single night. And obviously, like the MVP, when we do it in the more rhetorical ways, it would probably be Jimmy, just because obviously what his impact is on every part of the game. There's an argument to be made for Tyler and his contributions off the bench, and realistically, he's playing starters minutes and he's scoring
Right.
nearly as much as Jimmy is.
6
But
men of the year.
Jimmy Butler would be the MVP in the traditional sense of the term. But I think that PJ is the glue guy. I just wanted to be able to give him love because I don't know how his body. Look, he got hurt last night. I don't know how he's going to be in this postseason. But what he did for Miami during this regular season, it cannot be stated enough how valuable he was to the team and how important he was. So,
And
yeah, exactly. See, that's my sentiment right here. A tweet that has been put on the screen says, I would imagine Pat Riley would build a statue for PJ Tucker outside the arena tomorrow if he could. That was back in February. He's done even more stuff cool like that since. So
PJ Tucker in the playoffs, he's going to be a big time piece because he was a big piece for Milwaukee last season and they won it all.
We just got to hope he can hit those corner threes.
I have a pretty fun answer. The Strus is loose. Max
My guy.
Look, Boston, we wouldn't have won that game if it wasn't for Strus and his efforts.
I like the MVP being given out on one game.
He's played better than Duncan in my opinion this season. He's definitely earned starter minutes. He's taken the starting role, and that I guess that's a good waypoint to. What are your thoughts on Robinson? They gave this man 5 years, $90 million, and he's earning $16
what the heck
million.
happened to him?
He's earning. He's putting up acceptable numbers. In other teams, he would be a good player. He's putting up I think 11 right now.
He lives next to me, bro. He's like super nice.
First of all, I do think that the move to Max Strus was needed. It was the move that ultimately here in the way that they've re-tinkered with their rotation has made a big difference. And I think in the playoffs, it's going to remain the same. That said, like Duncan actually hasn't had like a bad season. He hasn't been quite the level of elite that you would like him to be. He has also had a number of like bad games. And so those memories stand out more than the fact that he hit 7 of 8 threes last night.
Just last night, I was about to say that.
Like, you know what I mean? Like in a game that the Heat kind of did have to have, that they didn't have their whole team, that like, so to be in the position that Duncan is in, it's almost this kind of, this is all working out. Like if you want to do the narrative thing, this is all working out perfectly, right? Because Max Strus is an ultra confident guy, but the idea that you're throwing him in here late in the season to be a part of the starting lineup, he's still got to play with that like level of like, all right, I'm here. I got to bring it. Like he's not comfortable in the starting position yet. He knows he's got to play his best basketball to maintain it. Duncan gets to now play with that like chip on his shoulder again of like, nobody thinks I can do it. And that's half the thing that kind of got him to be the 5-year, $90 million guy. And the way that it's tinkered with the rotation, the guys who they're playing alongside make more sense, and that Duncan is able to just sort of do his thing as a shooter, and they don't need his defense and extra, Max Strus's ability to take the ball off the dribble and make extra passes and things like that work with the units that they have him in. So to me, it just made sense to make the switch. I don't think that it's a referendum on Duncan Robinson, the basketball player. I think that he's still very good. I do think that 5 years, $90 million for a guy that's coming off your bench and might not play that many minutes is obviously something that would make, fans or whatever feel a certain way. Way I always look at it is, look, man, everybody's playing to about the salary cap and in the NBA. Everybody's doing the same thing. You got your roster for the year. Worry about next year. Like, this is what the roster is. Max Strus could be. Pretend in your head Max Strus is the guy making $90 million over 5 years. You'll feel a lot better, right? Like, it's just, it's one of those things where, to me, I'm just analyzing this team based off of who's on the roster, not based off their salaries, And so ultimately, like, he's going to make the contribution that they need, and they're going to need probably every series, they're going to need a night like what they had last night from Duncan Robinson, coming off the bench, shooting the lights out for at least a span of about 12 minutes. So to me, that's I'm excited to see what this team does in the postseason. I think their 9 or so man rotation is about solidified, and it's going to be really fun.
Oladipo isn't there because he had a pretty good game against Toronto. It was like 21 or 27, but that's a threat off the bench, though. Let's say someone gets injured, you put him in there, he could give you 20 a night.
We're talking about positional depth, baby. That's what they got. That's what the Marlins got. Feeling good.
Even I'm excited to watch some Miami Heat playoff basketball, but I will be giving all my focus to the Miami Marlins. So don't be confused. This is a Miami Marlins podcast. We got a little segue because, hey, the Miami Heat are playing phenomenal basketball. Even I've been paying attention. I do attend some of the games. But I think that's where we're going to wrap it up. Kevin, any last tidbits or notes?
This was awesome. This was probably one of my favorite episodes we filmed. I don't care if we went over an hour and 20, which is currently where we're about to hit. But, man, Jeremy, thank you for being on. This was awesome. We'll be definitely seeing you around the ballpark. And if you have any last words for the people watching out here.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you. And if you're still watching, thank you for dealing with me for an hour and a half or so.
I love this.
This was a blast. You guys are great. So let me just give a shout out to just Fish Stripes in general. You guys do amazing work, and I'm real proud to have been able to be here with you guys on this show in particular. Just for everybody who is a Marlins fan, if you're looking for coverage, you can follow me at Jeremy Taché. My handle was up for most of the show. And you should follow at Bally Marlins. I work for Bally. We cover the Marlins. You can follow at Swings and Mishes as well. I'm the co-host of Craig Mish's podcast. But also, and this is just as a favor to me, friends, subscribe to Miami Mic'd Up. It's my podcast. I think it's good. I really enjoy it, and I think you guys will enjoy it too. It's interviews most of the time. That's my face. If you're watching, that's the cover of the podcast. But yeah, essentially, I do a long form interview just about every week. Right now, we're in the middle of all this playoff coverage happening, so there's going to be a lot of conversations about the Heat and the Panthers. But do not worry, there will be Marlins as well. And in fact, Paul Severino is my guest this week. So Paul and I will be previewing the Marlins season, talking a little bit about his career. And then on the back end of it, we'll have a little Heat conversation with Tony Fiorentino. But there will be Miami Marlins on Miami Mic'd Up this season. Like, there will be Marlins players on here. I'm hoping relatively consistently, about once a month or so, maybe even more than that. So we shall see, but I'm looking forward to all those interviews and providing you the best coverage I can digitally here with Bally. So
sounds great. Well, thank you so much, Jeremy. And I think
thank you guys.
3 months from now in early July, we'll be talking about the Brian Reynolds acquisition.
Let's come back. I'll come back on, and we'll see where things are at.
You are definitely a scheduled guest to come back, so we appreciate it.
Sweet.
For Kevin, for Jeremy, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.